The exhibition draws together implements and photographs of the 1911 expedition, which for its scientific value eclipsed the exploits of adventurers such as Scott and Amundsen. Mawson's party sailed south on the steam yacht Aurora, which gave its name to the latest Antarctic research vessel Aurora Australis, built at Carrington Slipways. The original Aurora was lost on a voyage out of Newcastle in 1917. The expedition made its base camp at the gale-swept Commonwealth Bay, and there the camera of Frank Hurley captured images of men battling blizzards as well as the lighter side of life. Mawson's ice axe, snowshoes and goggles are on show, along with the ship's wheel and harpoon gun. There's also a great circle sextant, specially crafted for use at the South Pole.
It allows you to determine your position by measuring the height of celestial bodies above the horizon. You can't use a compass near the poles, so they built what they call a sun compass out of a piece of packing case. And you hold it up and you get the shadow to fall and indicate the direction of true north.
Two of the party died on the ice and Mawson himself barely survived an aborted trek. He missed his ship and weathered a bleak winter. Recordings of Morse code messages sound his despair and finally relief to be going home. The exhibition is of national significance, but a further thread ties it to Newcastle. When Mawson returned, he married Francisca Del Prat, the daughter of the general manager of the BHP.
We don't see any reason why a regional museum shouldn't hold things of national significance, and we're very proud to have had the help from the Australian Museum and the South Australian Museum to let us do that.
The Botanic Gardens have now achieved a park-like layout. Visitors can stroll the native lawns through stands of palms, grevillea, acacia and eucalypts. The latest attraction combines a work of art with those of nature. A ferro-concrete sculpture came into full bloom for its creator.
The sculpture comes from the earth and it's a growing form, and you can see the shapes in the sculpture related to the plants and the seeds around the garden.
The greening of the bushland site hasn't come cheap. $2 million have been ploughed into the 180-hectare property so far. But after nearly 5 years, it's just coming into its prime. A visitors' centre and walking trails offer hours of enjoyment, and apart from the labours of volunteer caretakers, nature's hand is showing its presence in the blossoming natives.
Now, on any normal Sunday, most of us are quite happy to sit back, put up the feet and do absolutely nothing. Not so for 57 very fit souls this morning who decided it would be good fun to paddle their way from the Copacabana Surf Lifesaving Club to the Kincumber Hotel, a distance of 27 kilometres. The annual event attracted some of the hottest names in the surf lifesaving movement, Sean Kenny and the Mercer brothers Darren and Dean from Wollongong. The journey was supposed to be a tame affair, but a strong northwest breeze played havoc with the field, and they were relieved to hit the calmer stretches of the Brisbane waters. And it was a great battle to the finish, with champion Ironman Darren Mercer proving he's the master of the ski, slashing 13 minutes off the record to finish in a time of 1 hour 58.07 minutes to beat home his brother Dean, and in third place was Brian Morton.
Late this afternoon, independent Ivan Welsh conceded defeat in the battle for Mayor of Lake Macquarie. With 28% of the vote, Ivan could not muster support to retain the position. Instead, his vocal rival, Alderman Doug Carley, has taken over as Mayor with 40% of the primary vote. A result Alderman Carley says does not surprise him.
I believe our party and friends of the party worked very hard to achieve this result.
As for Ivan Welsh, he says he's had enough of politics.
I'm off to America tomorrow, so I'll be looking at business enterprises there.
Although the final results are not yet known, it looks like Labor will hold the balance of power in Lake Macquarie from the independents, taking at least 8 of the 16 aldermanic seats. The ALP also fared well in Newcastle, with Lord Mayor John McNaughton gaining 52% of the vote, ahead of Citizens Group candidate Don Geddes. It appears Labor will hold half of the 12 positions on council, with the Greens gaining 1 seat. In Cessnock, Alderman Marie Callaghan will stay on as mayor. The position in Maitland and Gosford and that of Shire presidents in other areas will be decided when councils next meet. It could be Wednesday before all results are known. One thing that is sure is that residents of Newcastle want to return to the ward system of government. Around 70% of voters came out in favour of the wards in yesterday's referendum. Jodie McKay, NBN News. It's been a long, hard campaign to stop the closure of Wallsend Hospital, but with that now imminent, protesters say jobs and patient care are at risk.
There's an acceptance that certain parts of the hospital should be relocated. That's done on the basis that nurses' jobs are in jeopardy. They've stood firm. They've been threatened with a sack and deregistration. And what we want to do is, recognising that nurses are going to go anyhow, that we ought to attempt to provide the very best services for patient care.
Around 200 people met today in what could be the last public meeting over the hospital. According to Trades Hall Secretary Peter Barrack, the concern now is what the government has planned for the building.
There can be a future for the hospital. It may be different to what it is now, but certainly we want to get that in place as quickly as possible and ensure that the equipment in the hospital isn't taken out and we're left with a shell.
The picket line outside the hospital will continue at least for the next few days, but only as a precautionary measure.
Just to ensure that a monitoring of the equipment in the hospital takes place and that an unnecessary removal of equipment does not take place.
Welcome to the world of registered clubs, an association with a $9.6 billion annual turnover statewide and employing 64,000 people. 1,800 club delegates attended their 71st annual general meeting at the West Leagues Club after 4 days of seminars, activities and a trade fair set up in Harker Oval. An estimated $2 million has been generated for the city in accommodation and services to stage the convention. A main point of discussion was the statewide launch of Keno, now being trialled in Newcastle clubs.
And the success here has given us some idea of just how important that will be to our future financing and to the club movement generally.
Keno is similar to the lotto draw, but games are played every 6 minutes via a computer linked to Sydney. Selections are entered on a card for anything from $1 to more than $9,000 per play. An animated draw of 20 numbers is displayed throughout the club. It's the latest way to part with your money for the chance of a win, and even in the tough times, there seem to be plenty of patrons willing to try their luck.
The recession, we're riding through it. Some clubs are doing it tough, yes, but they have been in the past. Other clubs are thriving.
The Union Bank of Australia bought the site in 1886 and 28 years later demolished the old Ship-In Hotel that stood on the corner to make way for a new branch. The earthquake all but destroyed several floors of the structure. 2-ton sandstone blocks moved 2 inches during the quake, and ever since the building has been empty and surrounded by scaffolding.
We had to really pull 1.5 floors down, and that's a couple of hundred blocks weighing 2 tonne. A big job.
The facade has changed little since 1914, but as the ANZ sign returned to its rightful place today, a new era began for the building. The original doors reopened on a new look interior, and for the first time in 21 months the branch is back where it should be.
Well, the first 3 months we ran the branch from a conference room up at 490 King Street, which was challenging.
It then moved to temporary premises closer to the mall.
The customers stuck with us and our staff kept their cool and everything went well.
All floors have been completely refurbished at a cost of around $1.5 million. The first 2 levels will be used by the bank and the top floors will be leased as office space.
Terrible.
On the 28th of December 1989 at 10:27, Newcastle was shaken by an earthquake. Its devastation has been well documented, but until now little has been written about the previous tremors that hit the area. Regional historian Cynthia Hunter has documented them in a new book called The Earth Was Raised Up in Waves Like the Sea.
The book focuses on 20 incidents that I was able to pick up in the records.
Cynthia Hunter believes a tremor that occurred in 1868 was similar in size to the 1989 earthquake.
Certain buildings were damaged in much the same way as our buildings were damaged in this earthquake, but bear in mind that the buildings were much simpler buildings.
As well as recording past quakes, the book captures the lifestyle of the people who felt them. During the 1925 earthquake, silent films were in their heyday. As Cynthia's research indicates, Newcastle's Theatre Royal building swayed and the picture was projected from the screen onto the roof. Lord Mayor John McNaughton, who was at the book launch today, praised it as a valuable contribution to the area's history. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
After setting all sorts of attendance and betting records on the first day of the carnival, and with the westerly well and truly here, officials weren't too optimistic about the crowd, but their fears were unfounded as the punting public packed beautiful Broadmeadow for the Sport of Kings Day of Days in our town. Hard-earned dollars departed the digits in the hope of ending personal recessions, while others revelled in the thunder of the thoroughbreds. Activity may have been frenetic amongst the racegoers, but in the jockeys' room, a different atmosphere, as the men responsible for guiding their mounts and our money prepared for the 15th Winfield Newcastle Gold Cup. While some swapped photos in the form guide, the Cassidy brothers reflected on the battle at hand. Jim may have already ridden 3 winners for the day, but younger brother Larry wasn't about to let him make it number 4.
I'd love to, it'd be good. Haven't come all this way for nothing anyway.
And local jockey Wayne Harris got some last-minute advice as they mounted up. Larry Cassidy's Rural Prince was well supported with the bookies, as was Equidity with Mick Dittman in the saddle. Kiwi Galilee with Darren Beeban up firmed in the betting, but all the rage in the ring was the Tommy Smith-trained Maharaja with a little genius Shane Dye on board. 2,300 metres was the journey, and it was a pretty good start, with all hoops hoping to settle quickly. With just under 400 to run, it was anyone's Winfield Cup. With happy punters by the score, it was a tremendous return to the enclosure for Shane Dye and Maharaja, and an even more delighted Mrs Val Smith, who accepted the cup from the New South Wales Governor, Peter Sinclair. For Dye, the winner has a bright future.
He's not a bad horse, he's still a little bit weak, but he's going to improve with more racing, and he could develop into a very good horse.
Maharaja started at the good odds of 9 to 1, Ecliptic at 7s, and Rural Prince was third, starting favourite at 4 to 1.
The police versus media soccer clash is an annual event, but this year the boys in blue aren't about to make their game plan public. NBN's courageous cameraman risked arrest to bring you these pictures, uncovering an incredible sporting scam. But behind the intrigue is a great cause. The match on Saturday, part of a soccer gala at the Whitebridge Soccer Oval, is to raise money for the Hunter Heart Foundation. It's believed organisers have been overrun with referees desperate for the opportunity to book a policeman. My tip on the scoreline, media by 10.
The Rosebuds had every reason to celebrate today. Victory in last night's grand final replay was tasting sweet, but with less than a minute to go, the players were bracing themselves for their 5th consecutive grand final loss. All that changed when striker Ross Wells got a sweet ball in the square and confronted Western goalie Peter Oberhauser, the man who denied them a win on Sunday.
Well, it was only about 30 or 40 seconds left, and I just sort of kicked it and hoped for the best and went in. It just shows he's only human. He had to let one in.
Then came the dreaded penalty shootout, and it was Adamstown goalie Steve Dorman who made the crucial save that saw brother Scott step up to the victory altar after 4 years as a bridesmaid.
It's the best feeling in the world. I mean, that's the highlight of my career, and mate, to lift that trophy up was just... I was just bliss, I was just brilliant.
And no one would deny them the right to sing their own praises.
With the closure of Wallsend Hospital behind him, Dr Smythe is now concentrating on the financial affairs of the John Hunter. Dr Smythe is critical of management for having taken 6.5 weeks to give him the details of the hospital's current expenditure. He says the level of spending is unacceptable. The administrator says the John Hunter Hospital will absorb up to $14 million more than its allocated share of the Hunter's budget if it doesn't prune spending.
Well, quite clearly, if people can't count down there, I need to get some people in there who can count, and I'm working on that at the very moment.
Other health services are also under review, including geriatric, AIDS and casualty units. Dr Smythe has indicated that the role of the casualty section at the Royal Newcastle Hospital may change.
It seems to me that the options we should look at are changing it to be more a primary healthcare general practitioner type of role, alternatively closing the casualty, or thirdly looking at a more outpatient clinic type of role.
Dr Smythe is waiting on advice from the Working Party, which is reviewing the service. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Compared to some of his Merewether teammates, Matt Hoy is a picture of organisation. His packing technique might be haphazard, but at least he's on the right side of the country.
Luke's still in WA, I talked to him yesterday, and Nick I think still in Europe, but I'm sort of here, not really that organised, but sort of getting ready.
There were no such problems last year when Merewether won their 4th consecutive title on home surf at Dixon Park. This year's venue is not quite so convenient, Wollongong's Woonona Beach. Still, a building swell promises vastly improved conditions, and barring plane problems, Luke Egan and Nick Wood will be on deck to give the Novocastrians a full-strength team. Aiming for a Bjorn Borg-like 5th crown, Merewether will be the contest's tall poppies, but the all-star team is anything but complacent.
This year on the tour, everyone was just going, we're going to beat Merewether, we're going to beat Merewether. And sort of we'd just sit back and just go, oh, we're not saying anything, so we'll see what happens when we're down there.
Surfing fans can catch the highlights of the Quicksilver final on NBN News this weekend.
The Minister's recent decision to close 2 hospitals in Sydney and reduce services at 2 others has freed up $30 million for use elsewhere. The Central Coast will receive some of that money. It only has 2 beds per 1,000 people, compared with 3.5 beds in the Hunter and 4 in central Sydney. The coast is a growth area and the Gosford and Wyong hospitals are being expanded. Today the Minister inspected their progress.
My purpose of the visit is to ensure that the work commenced here at Wyong Hospital and at Gosford Hospital is on track, and to make sure that people understand that we're keeping the money up to this project and they will be finished on time.
The Minister's visit did not extend to the Hunter. Considerable heat has been generated by his decision to close Wallsend Hospital, but through it all, he has managed to stay clear of Newcastle.
It was quite obvious the attitude of the local members and of the trade union movement up there that I wasn't welcome, and I'm not about to go someplace where they determine I wasn't welcome.
The Minister didn't indicate when he would inspect at first hand the restructuring of health services in the Hunter, except to say his office door in Sydney is always open. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Since 1980, the Northern Soccer Federation offices have been located at Adamstown, and for a body that has run soccer from the Hawkesbury River to the Queensland border, the old building has cramped not only the full-time employees, it's seen its fair share of boardroom dramas. Adamstown Rosebuds want to develop the site for their State League team, and the invitation came from the newly promoted National League club, the Breakers. Why not move to Birmingham Gardens? That request was finally accepted yesterday after months of heartache.
The decision's been a hard one to take. We've had so many options to look at over the last 18 months, and we've made decisions and had rescission motions and deferred them, and when we finally got around to making a decision yesterday, and now that it's done, you know, I think everybody's going to be fully behind it.
Grand plans are afoot for the new office amenities that the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation will inhabit, but these plans are only concepts, not the final product. And the Federation is quick to point out this move should not be construed as a merger with the Breakers.
I hope it's not seen as that. The Federation has to keep its own identity and perhaps even enhance that.